What is beyond these experiences? What is beyond these colors? It's inviting me to come and play. Okay, this is nice. Now I'm really feeling like a child, enjoying the colors. So many nice colors. They are finding their own path in the whole universe. It also reminds me of our own movements from childhood to, grown up. Because there are so many movements and you can't predict the movements. Because there is no movement up, up, up like a linear path. Sometimes it's like you are walking and you think, oh, I'm reaching something, and then all of a sudden it's like, no, I'm falling. Same like these colors. Some are moving up, some are falling down. But you have to enjoy it, because otherwise you will become crazy, thinking, oh, I have to reach something. But spirituality is not about reaching something. It's being. I think this work, the nice thing is that it invites to play. So you become a child and everyone likes that. So you don't have to put too many words to it. But if you want to analyze, then you have to see, okay, how much is a person open to that space of happening? Because if you are really control-oriented, you want to have a certain output and that conviction that this is my space to put this input, to have that output, then you don't give space to that happening. And then it can become a bit too much confronting, because you don't know what can happen even in a second. It isn't happening because I can't do anything to say this is what I do and this would be the output. The patterns, the colors, they happen. But at the same time, there is this interaction, that interbeing. And at the same time, it's kind of giving me space to be. For me, it was inviting to go to the boundless realm of infinity. And I also saw the bubbles, and that reminded me of zero. To me, zero is in the middle between infinity and form, an unmanifested realm in us. And I think this work reminds me of that realm. Zero is like home in spirituality. And I like being at home, as everyone. It's a nice experience to connect, to interact with Solaris. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed the first film. My name, as Wendy said already, is Katja Kwastek. I'm professor of contemporary art history here at Freie Universität, and what I want to do in the next hour, where we have a break in between, but in total it's going to be an hour to discuss these different films. We are going to screen the films, and then I'm going to discuss them with the artists or the scientists, or both. That depends a bit on each of the films. So this first film that you just saw is filming Shada Nandram, who is professor of Hindu spirituality and society at our Faculty of Religion and Theology. And what we asked her, and that's actually what we asked all of the scientists that we invited into the gallery, is to really come with a fresh reaction on the artworks without also having researched too much on them beforehand. So that's maybe important to know. And they also haven't had any discussions with the artists before, apart from in the last work that Raoul already talked about by Dimitri and Evelina. But we're going to come back to that later. So one thing maybe still to mention also about Shada Nandram is that she is really closely involved in that project of the Zero Origin Foundation. So she was really also the link of this project, or one of the links of this project, with that research project of on the origin of zero. But now I'm really happy to say hello to Nicky Assman, who is here with us today, the artist of the work that you just saw and that Maria also played a bit with during her guided tour. So welcome. Maybe we can ask with just you saying, well, how did you feel about that interpretation by Shada Nandram? How did you?
Yeah, it was I really like this interpretation, and where I could connect with her also is that she sees it as this. So the soap film is sort of like a window, a portal, an intervention in the space, and for me this connects to this concept of zero, that you have something before and after. It's dividing literally the space, and how she connects it to infinity is quite nice. And I think for me it is something that it connects to the in-between. So the in-between is this moment of pause, or in Japan they call it the ma, the negative space. And you also have it in cinema. This work is reference to cinema, with the soap film being this abstract film that plays before you. And I think it is a moment that you are not thinking in the past, you are not thinking in the future, you are in the now, and you are observing and perceiving. And that makes it a very momentary piece. And I think this is what she's also relating to in her comments. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. So I also found her comments really fascinating, I have to say, also because, well, I'm an art historian, so of course if you would have put me in front of that work, I would have had very different reactions. I would probably have thought of some kind of media archaeology, also with the mechanics, like of scrolling through a film roll, or what you said, like abstract film. Also expanded cinema was already mentioned. So I mean, this of course is a very specific form. What we staged here is a very specific form of art-science interaction, because actually Shada came kind of blank to the work and didn't interact with you much before. But how would you see your relation with scientific research generally? Do you see yourself as someone who is kind of doing artistic research? So is there very much interaction with the exact sciences, as an example, to create these works?
I think what I would call it more is artistic experiments. And I generally start with something that I only know one thing about the work, which triggers me, or one observation. So for instance, with the soap film, I was working with soap bubbles, soap film, and then it was a moment that the sun entered the room where I was working and reflected the colored light of the soap film. And this is what got me into a deeper research of delving into the workings of the light, iridescence, colors, the breaking of the light. And so I think I enter something completely without knowledge, and then I just start to experiment. And sometimes you can approach or you can use the same methodology, like you have a hypothesis, you have a theory, like I think this is, and then you start to change one parameter at a time to get to the same result. But I think I would not, I have also this freedom without being hindered by that it has to be true or that it has to be proven, or So in that sense, I wouldn't compare it to a scientific methodology. Yeah, so usually it's one thing that triggers me, which makes me go delve into it deeper, and by experimenting, I come to something. And I think I'm not hindered in that aspect, that I'm not limited by what it cannot do or can do, because I just figure this out as I go along.
Yeah, that's really interesting. And I think what's also really nice, and also what you were saying at the beginning, that of course there is this interest in material, there's this interest in the, like, let's say, chemical properties of soap. But there's also that interest in the more spiritual reflections that it can evoke. And this is what Chada was focusing on. But I'm still wondering if you say, and you're also saying on your website that you're engaged, that you have a background in film and art science. So if you think of art science, for you, would that include something like Hindu spirituality? So
no, I think, and this, I make abstract work, and I think what the nice thing about this is that people can, they have the freedom to connect to the artwork with their own background, mind, associations. And I think it's really nice that everybody has their own perception and experience with the work. And I think for me, it's not so much a spiritual relationship, but more, for instance, I have a background in film, and I make installations that are more in the realm of expanded cinema. So you play with different screens. I make screens from soap film, metal grids, acrylic plates, or LEDs, and then this window, the screen is always this window to which you can be, to which you relate to. And for me, it connects to, in cinema, you are in this dark womb when you are watching a film, and then there's sometimes this moment that you sort of doze off, but not really, and then you snap back into reality, and then you have thought of something completely that you connected to things that you didn't. And I think this is something that also happens for me in the train, for example, and then the window is the train window and the landscape passing by in this certain rhythm, cadence, and then I also tend to connect things that I wouldn't connect before. And the windows of the soap film are for me a sort of similar reaction. I think in this moment of being in the now, you sort of defragmentize things and you connect things unaware of, unconsciously. This is for me what I like about it, and how it relates to cinema. This moment of in between.
Yeah, that's interesting. So is that also, I mean, when you were approached and you learned that this is going to be an exhibition about zero, was that something that was kind of your work would naturally connect to, or did that establish a new possibility of interpretation for you? Because of course I see this idea of the threshold, the limit, that's very close also to some of these interpretations of that number.
So in my work I don't work with the concept of zero, but I do relate it to these screens being like windows or portals that are connecting to this moment of pause or in-betweenness. So for me, the concept of zero relates to this, and you have the before and the after. In the film, you also see she's being filmed from the front and from the back of the soap film, and from the back you don't see any colors, and from the front you see all the colors. So there's this different way of looking at things, and I think it comes together in this thin layer of soap film.
Okay, I think, well, we'll open up to the audience soon, but maybe one last question for me, because I think this is very interesting also with your specific interest in film. So now we have a film, and it shows that they put quite a bit of effort in trying to capture your work on film again. So it's a work that engages with film, that has been filmed in a way that is even slightly artistic in itself. So do you have any reaction on how they staged this?
We both connected. So this work is part of a triptych on soap film. The first being Solaris, a more monumental setup with 2 screens and then automated, so you're a viewer in a space, seeing the 2 large soap films. There's a composition for the 2 large soap films. This is the second piece, Solaris, and the third piece is Liquid Solid, and they all have the word sol referring to the sun in it. And the third piece was me and another artist called Joris Schrijbels filming the soap film with a macro lens. And what they did was basically the same, but then we did it in conditions of minus 30 degrees because we wanted to research how the soap film would behave when it was freezing, and they slowed it down in the film. So I think the material is rich enough that you can approach it from different angles, and it's very nice to experiment with. So yeah, I can see it has much more to it than just one artwork.
Okay, thanks so much. Do we have questions from the audience?
We have one question, and that is regarding Maria introduced your work in the tour in the first video we saw, and she mentioned the Zero Group and that you are inspired by the Zero Group, and the question is regarding how has the Zero Group influenced your artistic practice?
So it was not an inspiration for this art piece, but I got acquainted with the work of Otto Pine. So he was a member of the founding member of the Zero movement, and in which, by the way, colors were it was more black-white, not colors. But he himself, as an individual artist, and his work, I heard him speak just before he died in New York, and the way he talked about his own work and his approach and the work he made, yeah, I really connected to this, and I had actually quite. Yeah, his own work is quite colorful and dealing with the sun, working with the elements in the material. And here, how I work with material is always trying to bring the color that is inherent to the material in this sort of hyper-realistic way forward. And so, yeah, I think this inspiration or kinship or being inspired by is more with this artist that was part of Zero.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that question. That was, it's also, we will see that there is quite a few connections also to earlier artworks, art movements in some of the works. So we will for sure come back also to these more like art historical components in after the break. So now we are going to have a break until 5 o'clock. Thanks for now, and hope you can get some tea or refreshments before coming back.